An officer came to invite Lu Sheng to the military star selection ceremony. Lu Sheng followed behind the officer, heading deeper into the base. They eventually reached the entrance of a grand conference hall. Pushing the door open, all eyes within the room turned to Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng saw Snowy and Chin. The other instructors and students were present too, including Rocky and the other two he had met during the selection process. He also noticed a middle-aged man in military uniform, gold stars adorning his shoulder, exuding an aura of imposing authority. Lu Sheng guessed that this man must be the highest-ranking officer for this year's selection, Major General Yu of the Eastern Military District. Upon seeing Lu Sheng entering the room, General Yu greeted him with a warm smile as if he was seeing Lu Sheng as a younger family member of his, beckoning him to come over. At that moment, nearly all eyes in the conference hall were fixated on Lu Sheng. Then, one by one, badges and rewards were presented by the officers. Lu Sheng's badge was a brilliant gold. General Yu personally pinned it on him. Its material was the same as that of a Grandmaster's badge, only differing in design. General Yu hoped that one day Lu Sheng would wear the true Grandmaster's badge. With a solemn expression, Lu Sheng replied calmly while putting his hand into a fist. That day won't be too far off. General Yu was momentarily taken aback, but then he burst into joyful laughter. The expressions of everyone in the room were mixed. Hearing these words, none of the people doubted Lu Sheng, and Lu Sheng said it without coming across as arrogant. It seemed as though he was merely stating an inevitable fact. Every year, the Eastern Military District held the military star selection, but none have ever been treated by General Yu with such a demeanor. Lu Sheng was the first. Subsequently, it is time to give out the rewards. Those ranked in the top 10 each received a reward of vials of beast blood. Lu Sheng received one as well. It was a small vial, containing about 300 milliliters of a red liquid. With a grand gesture, General Yu led the way out of the conference hall. Lu Sheng, Rocky, David, and Amy, followed by their respective instructors, while the rest could only watch them with envious eyes. They knew that they were about to enter the beast blood pool and the marrow pool. Only those in the top 3 had the privilege to enter the beast blood pool. However, due to the exceptional performance of the prodigious Lu Sheng, General Yu, in high spirits, even added an extra slot for 4th place. Li thought of the full pool of beast blood and beast marrow which he had no chance of getting. The once arrogant young boy suddenly felt that the small vial of beast blood he held was no longer enticing. Soon, they arrived in a brightly lit room filled with various apparatuses and tubes. General Yu turned to Lu Sheng and the others, instructing them to remove their clothing and prepare to enter the cultivation chambers. Except for Lu Sheng, everyone was led to cultivation chambers filled with beast blood. After undressing, they all entered their respective chambers, while Lu Sheng was led by General Yu to the beast marrow pool. Lu Sheng saw before him a cultivation chamber about 2 meters high and 1 meter in diameter, filled halfway with a pale golden liquid. He curiously gazed at the amber-like fluid flowing gently behind the clear glass and couldn't help but ask, why is it only half filled? Why not fill it up? Snowy rolled her eyes and said exasperatedly, questioning if Lu Sheng was aware of the cost of these valuable beast marrows. This alone cost over 1.5 billion, and that's just the cost. If sold, the price would be 10 times more. Lu Sheng nodded in amazement, but then asked seriously, what if it's not enough for him to absorb? Can he get a refill? Snowy was speechless. Another officer chimed in, chuckling. After stripping down, Lu Sheng entered the marrow pool. Snowy looked him over and couldn't help but blush while admiring the fluidity and perfection of his muscles and his tall, proportionate physique, commenting softly that she didn't expect that. Lu Sheng had a pretty good build. With a splash, Lu Sheng jumped into the cultivation chamber. As he submerged, the pale gold liquid reached up to his neck. It felt as if needles were desperately pressing against his skin, trying to burrow into him. He dove deeper, letting the pale golden liquid engulf him completely. Now, the energies inside the chamber, which felt almost alive, rapidly surged into his body. The overwhelming energy rampaged inside him like a raging flood. Every inch of his skin, every fiber of his flesh, even every strand of his hair, was immersed in the embrace of energy, greedily absorbing it. The influx of massive energy propelled his physique further down the path of the indestructible golden body technique. His blood energy level was skyrocketing every second, roaring through his veins, evolving to a consistency as thick as mercury. David was the first to emerge from the cultivation chamber. Throughout the process, there was a constant crackling sound from his body, indicative of his rapidly advancing martial prowess and vastly improved physical strength. An officer nearby handed him a large towel. David took it, wiping away the residual liquid. The officer complimented David, saying he nearly drained the chamber, truly worthy of being called a prodigy. David chuckled, but then curiously asked, what about the others? The officer glanced to the side, informing him that he was the first to come out. Upon hearing that he was the first to come out of the chamber, the smugness he had just felt disappeared instantly. The officer comforted him that he relies on psychic power and not physical strength. David knew that the longer one stayed in the beast blood pool, the more energy they absorbed, and the greater the benefits received. Minutes later, Amy also came out of the chamber. She was extremely excited that she would soon break the bottleneck and become a level 4 martial artist. Finally, Rocky's chamber opened. Among the 3, Rocky was the strongest, and through the beast's blood, he directly advanced to the 5th level. David and Amy's pupils constricted slightly, their hearts throbbing with shock. Seeing that Rocky reached level 5 without fully absorbing the first chamber was very surprising to them. The officer next to them said they got it wrong. This was the second batch. Sure enough, the two saw an empty container next to Rocky's cultivation chamber, still containing some remnants of the beast's blood. The two thought to themselves, in the second chamber, which means, at about the same time as them, Rocky managed to absorb 2/3 more of the beast's blood than they did. Absorbing 2/3 more of the beast's blood, one can only imagine the immense benefits Rocky obtained. The look in David and Amy's eyes when they looked at Rocky became a lot more complicated. Just as Rocky was about to get dressed, he took a few steps he couldn't believe his eyes. General Yu walked up to the cultivation chamber, looking at the boy with closed eyes inside the transparent glass and asked, how did it go? Was it smooth? Snowy nodded, smiling and said, it's just that the consumption of the special marrow was a bit fast. Watching the pale gold liquid level that was about to drop below eye level, General Yu casually said, give Lu Sheng as much as he could absorb. Pour everything from the reserve chamber to ensure the best results. Suddenly, a staff member mentioned that the extra beast marrow in the reserve chamber was already used up. General Yu paused for a moment. His expression became serious. Staring at the boy with closed eyes in the cultivation chamber, he instructed the staff to quickly check the warehouse, remarking that he wanted to see just how much of a surprise this kid could give him. Another container of beast marrow was poured into the cultivation chamber, submerging Lu Sheng's head. Then, at a speed visible to the naked eye, it rapidly diminished. Lu Sheng repeatedly honed his indestructible golden body technique over and over, tempering every muscle and bone in his body. Another 2 containers of 4th level beast marrow were brought forward. General Yu's face remained expressionless, but his hands behind his back were trembling slightly. Continue, he ordered. Lu Sheng felt as if countless volcanoes inside him had suddenly erupted. He could distinctly sense energy continuously flowing into his body, seemingly inexhaustible. Just half a container of this unique marrow could bring such immense energy, aiding Lu Sheng in completing the first phase of the indestructible golden body. If this is the power of 4th level beast marrow, how terrifying would the 5th, 6th, 7th, or even higher levels be? It's almost unimaginable. At the same time, the staff looked toward General Yu and asked if they should continue. Everyone in the room glanced at the side of the cultivation chamber, which had over a dozen empty glass containers. General Yu's lips quivered slightly. Even as a 7th level grandmaster and also a major general, he was finding it hard to keep calm. He ordered them to keep adding until Lu Sheng couldn't absorb anymore. He ordered with a surge of anger, If this kid doesn't join the Eastern Military District in the future, General Yu swears that he will skin him alive. The cost of a single container of the unique marrow was over 1 billion. He had already spent over 10 billion. Was there a black hole inside Lu Sheng? Lu Sheng saw that every bone in his body had turned golden, gleaming brilliantly. The first phase of the indestructible golden body was complete. Between his bones and muscles, something seemed to be germinating and growing. He had successfully advanced to a 4th level martial artist. His physique and martial arts had made a monumental breakthrough, and his overall combat capability was about to witness an unprecedented enhancement. The chamber suddenly burst open, and General Yu could hardly believe that Lu Sheng had absorbed all the beast's marrow. Lu Sheng leaped out of the cultivation chamber. As his feet touched the ground, the floor cracked beneath him. A tall, statuesque figure stood there, with droplets of golden liquid trickling down the contours of his chiseled muscles, creating small puddles on the floor. The female officers and Snowy in the room all stared at Lu Sheng. His entire body radiated a golden glow. When Rocky, David, and the others arrived, they knew that the gap between them and Lu Sheng had grown even larger. Snowy gave a bitter smile, acknowledging that in just 2 months, Lu Sheng had become even more powerful than her. General Yu's gaze was intense, and suddenly he took a step forward, reaching out to grab the spirited young man in front of him. However, Lu Sheng didn't avoid the grasp. Instead, his face lit up with excitement. He tensed his right arm, preparing for the forceful punch. Tenfold stellar force, Grandmaster technique, 10 suns in the sky. Lu Sheng's body emits a fiery glow. The fists and broad palms clashed hard against each other. Lu Sheng stepped back several times, leaving cracks in the hard floor with every step. Shaking his sore arm, Lu Sheng gave a wry smile and said, "General Yu used too much force on a 4th level martial artist." General Yu's eyes sparkled, and he burst into hearty laughter. The aura of a Grand Master surged around him like tidal waves. He complimented Lu Sheng, saying that his combat strength didn't look like someone who just advanced to the 4th level. Lu Sheng spreads his hands helplessly, but he is at the 4th level. General Yu, with an annoyed look on his face, retorted, he doesn't care if Lu Sheng is at the 4th level or not. After consuming 15 billion worth of his beast marrow, getting one slap from him is still considered light. The officers and students who rushed over, including Lu Sheng himself, were in shock at the scattered containers labeled 4th level beast marrow across the floor. Even if they knew that General Yu would not use his full strength, the attack was still a genuine blow from a level 7 Grandmaster. A Grandmaster level martial artist has a minimum combat power of 1 million. How could anyone like Lu Sheng easily withstand such force? At this very moment, the gazes of all the officers and students in the chamber room shifted towards Lu Sheng. Rocky, David, and Amy were utterly dumbfounded. A direct hit from a Grandmaster and 15 billion worth of the beast marrow. They always knew there was a wide gap between them and Lu Sheng, but never imagined it would be this big. At the 4th level, Lu Sheng might already possess the combat power of 500,000, which is equivalent to a peak level 6 martial artist. The overwhelming force overshadowed everything, and they couldn't fathom how Lu Sheng managed to take on General Yu's attack. Just thinking of this sent shivers down their spines, filling them with a sense of terror. David trembled from head to toe, while Amy felt as if her soul had been ripped out. Snowy and Chin gazed at Lu Sheng, thinking about the fact that he was still a high school student who hadn't even taken the unified exam yet. At that thought, Chin turned to Snowy, who nodded in agreement. They both reached the same conclusion. Lu Sheng would undoubtedly score the top in the unified exam this year. Rocky stared at the scattered containers on the ground, recalling that Lu Sheng, of the same age as him, was already having a combat power of 500,000. What would happen when he advances to level 5, or level 6? Would he truly be on par with a Grandmaster? Recalling that now that Lu Sheng had already displayed the will of a Grandmaster, becoming one was inevitable. Only then did Lu Sheng realize something. He had absorbed a significant amount of 4th level beast marrow. No wonder he felt that the energy was a bit exaggerated earlier, and for some reason it had been continuously replenishing. He gave an awkward smile while thanking General Yu. After all, it was worth 15 billion. General Yu wasn't stingy. The favor General Yu has shown to Lu Sheng is indeed very generous. General Yu waved his hand dismissively, saying lightly, telling Lu Sheng there was no need to thank him. When Lu Sheng gets on the battlefield, just slay a few more beasts. That way it won't be a waste of all this beast marrow from my Eastern Military District. Lu Sheng nodded, clasping his hands together in a respectful gesture. With a serious expression, he believed that facing the enemy on the battlefield was every martial artist's duty. He would let his actions speak for him. General Yu looked at the young man with satisfaction, as if he saw a glimpse of a marshal in him. Turning around with a joyful laugh, he briefly bid farewell to Lu Sheng. However, he believed that the next time they met, Lu Sheng would surely become a Grandmaster, and he was confident that day wasn't far off. Snowy approached Lu Sheng, informing him that the military star selection had concluded successfully. She offered her congratulations, and then inquired about Lu Sheng's preparation for the unified exam. When she asked which university he was aiming for, Lu Sheng was puzzled, and wanted to listen to Snowy for recommendations. Snowy smiled, saying, with Lu Sheng's current strength, any university in the country is at his disposal. If Lu Sheng is looking at the eastern region, then Dongning Martial University is the best choice. After all, Lu Sheng was originally from Dongning Province, so he'll undoubtedly receive special treatment and benefits there. However, her expression suddenly turned serious. This was her opinion and recommendations before. A month ago, she would have surely advised Lu Sheng to attend there. But now, Snowy wanted Lu Sheng to head to the royal capital, Snowy continued, her voice earnest. Because in the royal capital, there are 7 divine martial universities, the birthplaces of their nation's martial arts. It's where the entire nation's most elite martial talents gather. After joining one of the 7 divine martial universities, if Lu Sheng could break the record of the divine martial tower, he could earn the favor of a martial saint. Under the guidance of a martial saint, there's a high possibility of breaking through and becoming an 8th level Grandmaster. Martial saint, a distant and unfamiliar title. Snowy's expression grew solemn. Martial saints are the pillars of their world, possessing martial prowess beyond imagination. Their authority even surpasses that of military districts and national powers. Currently, their nation boasts 3 9th level martial saints: the Supreme Martial Saint, Zhao Ji, the Jade Martial Saint, Tan Zhongyu, and the only female martial saint, the Dark Star Martial Saint, Lin Zhengyue. Lu Sheng recalled viewing the timeline in the dream realm. At this stage, the strongest in this world were only at the 9th level, which meant that the martial saints stood at the pinnacle. After a brief moment of silence, Snowy spoke first. She can't make decisions for Lu Sheng because she can't predict his future. But Snowy believes Lu Sheng's future may reach farther than anyone else's, perhaps even beyond that of a martial saint. Lu Sheng looked at her, slightly surprised. He hadn't expected Snowy to hold him in such high regard, but considering his 3 martial techniques, passed down by the strongest level 11 martial artists in the future, along with the knowledge and martial arts experience spanning 10,000 years in the future, he was confident that his future achievements would indeed surpass that of a martial saint. From a distance, Chin watched the two. Hearing Snowy speculate that Lu Sheng, currently at only the 4th level, might one day surpass the level of a martial saint, he was initially skeptical. However, in an instant, he felt he might have misjudged. The unparalleled talent that Lu Sheng demonstrated suggested that his future might not be so limited after all. Snowy looked downcast, remarking, the highest rank in the entire military district is the Grand Marshal, who has only reached the 8th level Grandmaster level. He's never been able to break through to the 9th level Martial Saint. Lu Sheng asked, even with the resources of the entire military district, can he not break through? Chin slowly approached, shaking his head. It's far more complicated than he thought. There may be only one level difference between the 8th and 9th levels, but to cultivate an 8th level Grandmaster, the military has already exhausted all its top-tier resources. The 9th level isn't something that can be achieved just by relying on resources. The gap between the two levels is immense and almost unfathomable, hence why 8th level is still the Grandmaster, while the 9th level is the Saint. Having a 9th grade Martial Saint has always been a long-cherished wish of their military. Alas, it remains unfulfilled. Snowy sighed. As an officer of the Eastern Military District, she should encourage Lu Sheng to stay here, but she doesn't want to hold Lu Sheng back. She hopes that Lu Sheng can choose his own path, and she will always support Lu Sheng's decision. Hearing this, Lu Sheng's heart skipped a beat. Standing before him was Snowy clad in a deep blue military uniform. Under the brim of her cap, she had a perfect oval face, perfect skin, and exquisite, stunning features. He thought about the potential future if he stayed in the Eastern Military District. He might indeed end up marrying Snowy, as the information from the Dream Realm suggested. Avoiding Snowy's gaze, he said with conviction, Lu Sheng is grateful for all of Snowy's help. Just like his promise to General Yu, Lu Sheng will one day set foot on the battlefield to defend their homeland. It's both his duty and obligation. Lu Sheng will never forget or let the Eastern Military District and Snowy down. Snowy's face lit up with a relieved smile. Looking deeply into Lu Sheng's eyes, she looked forward to the day Lu Sheng returned to the Eastern Military District. After a few seconds, they both blushed, and Lu Sheng coughed awkwardly. He didn't want to linger in this odd atmosphere alone with Snowy. But Chin